Greetings to all and welcome to the very initial tutorial of Abaqus. In this video tutorial we will see the difference between dependent and independent instance. Whenever you go for import multiple components in Abaqus and go for assembly, there are two options to create a assembly. Either you can choose dependent instance type or independent instance type. So I'll try to explain what are those options and how to use those options when they are required and when they are not required. So before go for directly on the software, let me explain those things in PPT. In the dependent part instance, original geometry is used as an instance. Okay, but make sure here in independent part instance a copy of original geometry is created. So the meaning is nothing. If you are going to copy one part, okay, its image will be created which will not take memory as original one. The program will be reuse the original component itself, but here if you use any component multiple time, all time it will be create a duplicate copy of it. Okay, so let me show you in the software again. And if I use the dependent mesh, it will not take memory, it will just create a image of that bolt on these four position. But if I use the independent instance, what will happen? The original copy will be created and you can control those four copies individually for meshing purpose. But in dependent meshing, whatever the meshing you done on the original part, the same meshing will be reflect on the all four bolt. The same thing I mentioned in point 2, mesh on the original geometry has to be done, and here we can control meshing on each part individually. So there is one benefit of it. If you have to create different meshing for the individual component, the components are identical but you want a different meshing, so you have to go for the independent part instance. But if you don't want to create a individual meshing for component, likewise here for the component, for the bolt component, don't need to create different meshing, so you can use that part as a dependent instance. So as I told you at first point, when we go for make more instance in assembly and we are using dependent instance, the same mesh will be reflect on the all instance. But if we are using the independent instance and we are going to create more copy of the part, no mesh will be reflect on the instance. The original geometry will be copied and this copied geometry we have to mesh individually. So here we have some advantage and disadvantage, we will look for that. So before that I am going to show you in the software how to use those options. Okay, one more thing that I want to tell you, there is one example I have. This is one of the tool assembly, and for that tool assembly we can go for use the instance as dependent and independent. So there is a one thumb rule that which type of component I have to choose dependent and which type of component I have to choose independent. When we have multiple copy of the component, you have to go for the dependent instance, like as I told you, bolt component. So here we have this type of bolts here and the four instance of the bolt we have here, so we can use that component as a dependent instance. But that plate is a single component and this plate also is a single component. We don't need any copy of this component, we can choose that component as an independent component. And similarly we have copy, these things are nothing but your springs, and we have multiple springs here, and each time we need to use the same spring with the same meshing, so we can use as a dependent instance and we can copy it multiple times. Similarly we have here another type of bolts and those things also we can copy. But in case when you have one component, that similar component you want to use 2 times or more time, but you want a different meshing on the all component, then you have to go for independent component. Let me show you in the software. Okay, see, so just cancel it and I'm going to show you the part component. So in the part modeling we have two parts, one is the bolt and this one is the plate. Okay, till now we not gone for assembly and all, not for meshing even. So just go for here. I'm not going to define property step and all those things. I want to show here only the dependent and independent instance meaning. So just go for assembly here and go for instance. select the bolt part and plate part both, and go for just dependent instance first. Auto offset options is checked on, and just go for OK. So right now I did not copied any component, but I will go for copy it. Okay, so before the copying the original component, I am going to meshing. So just go for mesh here, and look, the another most important thing, if we are going to use the dependent instance, we can't mesh such component using assembly. If I go for assembly meshing here the my meshing options, so it will be represent a error message. You can read this error message. That is nothing but if you want to mesh this component in the assembly, you have to make them independent. Okay, so we have to go for the part for the meshing of the component, and individual component I have to mesh. There are two component, bolt component, plate component. So first I am going to mesh the plate component. If you want to define seeding and mesh control and those all things, just you can go for it. I'm directly meshing, just go for mesh it. Okay, so here we have 3 element along the depth, and this plate is meshed, and then now I go for mesh the bolt component. For the bolt component, I want to define the element size, that if I go for change the element size, you will get a clear idea of it. So here I am defining element size as 2, apply and OK. Just go for mesh and click on yes button. Okay, so this is the element size 2, you can see here. Now again go for the assembly. In the assembly, yeah, those components are meshed. If you are unable to see the meshing in assembly, just go for check on these options. Okay, so native mesh. Look, right now I have one plate and one bolt component, and I want one copy of the plate component and one copy of the bolt component. Just go for again here the instance options, make a copy of bolt, look, and click on apply, and similarly make a copy of plate and click on apply. Make sure you use the auto offset options, otherwise those instance will be overlap each other. Just go for OK. See, the meshing is done on the copied component, and if I go for change the meshing on the original part, I cannot mesh the instance individually if I using the dependent instance. And if I go for change the meshing on the original part, see the part is here and I want to change the meshing on the bolt part. Just go for here shading, define the element size as 10, that you will easily able to detect. Just go for apply, OK, and mesh again, go for yes. So quite large elements are there compared to the previous one. Just go for here assembly, and see the both bolt component are meshed using the element size 10. So that I want to tell you, if you are using the dependent mesh, you do not need to mesh those instance again and again if you are using the multiple instance. Okay, but if you are using the independent instance, you have to mesh them individually. Okay, so I cannot use dependent and independent instance at a time for the single component. That's why I'm going to delete my assembly components. So just go for delete those 4 components here, delete. Now again go for create the instance bolt and plate component, and yeah, here one more thing, the component is meshed already, and we meshed when those components are dependent instance. So first we have to delete the meshing also. Just go for mesh here and go for part here and just go for delete those mesh, delete mesh, yes, as well as go for delete mesh for the plate component, yes. Okay, now again go for here assembly instance, independent instance, select the bolt component and plate component and click on apply. So these two part is now independent instance. Now again I want to create a independent instance of plate and bolt also. So before creating a instance, I just go for mesh as we created it in previous. Just go for mesh. See, I used here independent instance and I can mesh that parts in assembly itself. Just go for defining mesh type, element type, mesh procedure if you want, and just go for directly mesh. So select the part which you want to mesh and just go for done. Those components are meshed, you can see here. And now again go for here in the assembly environment, just go for instance. I need a copy of bolt as well as I need a copy of plate. See, in the previous case when we use the dependent instance, and if I go for create more copy of the same component, they are already meshed as I told you. But here if I use the independent instance, they will not meshed, they will create a exact copy, original copy of the geometry. So just go for OK, and you have to mesh them again. So just you can go for here again in the mesh module, and here just go for seeding options, select the part for seeding and define the size. I can define size as 2, go for apply, OK, and now go for mesh, select the part, just go for mesh. See, in the independent instance we can create a copy of the geometry and we can mesh those individually. And similarly for this plate component, again go for seeding here and go for done, and element size I'm going to define as 10, apply, OK, and just go for mesh that part. Select the part and go for mesh. There is difference in element size. For visualization purpose, if you want to change element size 4, just you can go for here again seeding, select the part, go for here element size as 20, apply, OK, and again go for mesh, select the part and done. Now you can very easily detect the difference between meshing of these two components. In this initial video tutorial, that's all. I want to tell you only the difference between dependent and independent instance, and now you are easily able to detect the difference and you can utilize the options. So sometime you need to use the independent instance and sometime you may need to use the dependent instance. I suggest that if you are going to use the same component multiple times, just go for dependent mesh, that you not need to mesh those components again and again. And another advantage we have here for the dependent instance, that it will take less memory as compared to the dependent instance. So here we have advantage, consume less memory. Disadvantage, we cannot perform geometry operation, like if you want to split the dependent instance copy, you cannot split individually. If you go for split the original geometry, then your copy also will be split, and here that operation we can perform. Like if you create a independent instance copy, just you can perform any geometrical operation and meshing operation on that. And here we have another advantage, like as well as we can add such independent part meshing. So that's all for this video tutorial, and thank you for listening.